All right, strap in. I want you to do that thing again. Retreat into the deepest, dustiest corner of your imagination, because I'm sending you back. Not to Argentina this time. No, I'm feeling generous. Or maybe I'm not. Let's say I fire up that rickety time machine of mine and drop you off about 25 million years ago, smack dab in the middle of the Oligocene epoch, off the coast of what will one day become South Carolina. You step out, the air is warm, wet, and smells like nothing you've ever breathed, like salt and swamp and something ancient. You're standing on a sandy beach, maybe a few feet from the water's edge, and then I whisper in your ear, something is hunting you. Where do you look? Come on, be honest. You're gonna whip your head side to side, scanning the dunes for a saber-toothed something, or maybe you'll stare into the tree line expecting a bear dog to come crashing out. If I dropped you in the water, you'd probably just accept your fate and look down at your own kicking feet. But up? No. Nobody looks up first. And yet, here in this ancient coastal paradise, up is exactly where you should have looked. Because circling above you, with a wingspan that would make a small airplane jealous, is the single largest flying bird that has ever lived on this planet. Meet Pelagornis undersea. Now, I know what you're thinking. What about Argentavis? And you're right to bring up that magnificent Argentine monster. Argentavis was the heavyweight champion, the sumo wrestler of the skies, built like a feathered fridge with attitude. But Pelagornis? Pelagornis was the NBA power forward on a megadose of growth hormone. We're talking about a bird whose wingspan has been estimated at somewhere between 6.1 and 7.4 meters. That's 20 to 24 feet. Let me make that real for you. Go find a giraffe. Lie it down on its side. Now double it. That's still not quite there. How about this? If you took the biggest living flying bird today, the wandering albatross, with its beautiful 11-foot wingspan, you could line up two of them tip to tip, and Pelagornis would still have room to stretch. This thing could have used a Boeing 737's boarding ramp as a perch. The story of how we found this beast is almost as ridiculous as the bird itself. For decades, paleontologists had found weird, fragmentary bones of giant pseudo-tooth birds all over the world, bits of skulls with those bizarre, bony, tooth-like projections along the beak. But nobody had a complete enough skeleton to truly grasp the scale. Then, in 1983, while workers were digging a new terminal at the Charleston International Airport, yes, an airport because irony is real, they unearthed a nearly complete skeleton. And when the paleontologists finally pieced it together, I imagine they just sat there in silence for a good 5 minutes, maybe laughed nervously, then went to find a very large drink. This thing was so big that its humerus, the upper arm bone, was longer than your entire arm. Its wings, when fully extended, would have covered a suburban driveway. The lead scientist, Dan Ksepka, eventually published the description in 2014, and the world collectively said, "Wait, what?" But here's the thing that messes with your head. This giant wasn't a predator of land animals. It wasn't swooping down to carry off screaming llamas or terrorizing little proto-horses. No, Pelagornis was an open ocean specialist, a supersized, bony-toothed floating nightmare for fish and squid. Its beak was lined with those pseudo-teeth, sharp, conical, bony projections that weren't true teeth but looked the part. Think of a seagull that got hit by gamma radiation and then decided to become a flying piranha. It would soar over the ancient Atlantic for days, maybe weeks, using thermal updrafts and dynamic soaring just like albatrosses do today, except its shadow on the water would have been the size of a small sailboat. And when it spotted a nice plump fish near the surface, it would dip down, snatch it with that tooth-lined beak, and swallow it whole. No chewing, no mercy. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or rather, the bird in the sky. Could it actually fly? I mean, really fly? With a wingspan like that and an estimated body weight of maybe 20 to 40 kilograms, say the size of a medium dog, it was pushing the absolute limits of what's physically possible for a flying animal. To get off the water, it would have needed a good headwind and a lot of paddling, like a seaplane with feathers. Once airborne, it almost never flapped. Every flap would have cost a ridiculous amount of energy, so instead, it became a master of the glide. It would ride rising air currents and wind gradients over the waves, turning the ocean's own breath into a free, endless elevator. In a way, Pelagornis wasn't just a bird. It was a living sail, a bone and feather glider that evolved to do one thing better than any creature before or since: cover immense distances without ever touching the ground. So why don't we see birds this big anymore? Why is the albatross the heavyweight champ of today, when Pelagornis and Argentavis both pulled off the impossible for millions of years? The answer, as always, is the universe's least favorite word: change. Around 2.5 million years ago, the climate began to shift. Ocean currents rearranged themselves. The steady, reliable winds that Pelagornis depended on for its low-energy lifestyle became more chaotic. Prey patterns changed, and a bird that big, that specialized, that finely tuned to a specific set of conditions, well, it couldn't adapt fast enough. It didn't scream or rage against the dying of the light. It just faded. One day, the last Pelagornis took off from a shrinking coastline, caught a thermal that wasn't quite strong enough, and came down for the final time. But here's the beautiful, haunting part. You and I, we look up at the sky today and see gulls, crows, maybe a bald eagle if we're lucky. We have no idea that just a geological blink ago, the sky was big enough to hold monsters. So the next time you're standing on a beach feeling small, I want you to look up. Really look, and imagine, just for a second, a shadow the size of a car gliding silently over you. That was real. That was Pelagornis sandersi, the biggest flying bird that ever lived, and it owned the sky like no one else ever has.